It's the place of dreams. You almost start to wonder whether it actually exists.
As a little kid, you always hear about Aldabra. Your parents talk about it, and it just always seems this magical paradise place that you really want to come to.
This is the world's best kept secret, right? But in here, we have this magical world.
400 miles from Africa, Aldabra sits like a stepping stone in the Indian Ocean. The most remote of the Seychelles Islands, this is an isolated, protected world, uninhabited, save for the dozen rangers who fight to keep its pristine waters wild and clean and free from human impact. But there's a problem.
Aldabra is an amazing protected area, but you have limits on how much you can protect it.
We're seeing stuff from all over the world washing up on our shores.
It's just some kind of terrible mistake that this place has become the world's rubbish dump.
It doesn't just stop at the sea, it ruins everything.
It is us, it is me, you, everyone. It's doing this to such an pristine environment that is untouched.
Poor thing is tangled up in, it's like fishing gear. It's gone through the bone here as well.
Our waste washing in, polluting paradise. It is dawn. An endangered green turtle, her 100 eggs safely laid, buried deep in the sand, hauls herself back down the beach, past plastic. Minutes-old hatchlings in the race for their life to the sea. Their path strewn with plastic. Life for them is hard enough. A UNESCO World Heritage Site for nearly 40 years, Aldabra's protected waters have made it an ideal location for turtles to lay their eggs. The nesting holes pepper the beaches. But they accumulate and trap waste, having an immediate impact on the habits of this protected species.
So me and the team are here today on Beach 25, which is a turtle nesting beach on Aldabra. It's Tuesday the 26th and it's early in the morning. We've just got to the beach and we're faced with all of this. During the night there was about 9 endangered green turtles that came up or attempted to come and nest on this beach. And as you can see, the beach crest is absolutely covered in marine debris litter. And just 2 of those turtles were actually able to nest. The rest of them got to these big piles of trash and then just went back down into the sea because they couldn't find anywhere to nest.
In this land that time forgot, turtles are not the only large reptiles affected. Aldabra is home to the biggest population of giant tortoises in the world. Once nearly hunted to extinction, there are now 150,000 of them. Long-lived animals now consuming our litter.
He's eating some plastic. I'm going to quickly take it away from here. Not happy with that, but this is it, eaten on the sides. I was trying to eat it.
Several of our volunteers have had to remove plastic from the mouths of tortoises, much to their disgruntlement. You can see he's made some decent headway into that. You know, they don't have teeth, but they do have these very hard jaws. You certainly wouldn't want to be bitten by one. And they can chomp this stuff and eat it. And if this cat was on its own and not attached to this bottle, you'd have a much better chance of swallowing it. It's not their natural food item, but they're not very discriminate eaters. They're living on in a very hostile environment. There isn't a lot of food, and they have to take their chance, especially in the dry season here, which can be long. They have to really have a go at anything that looks like it might be edible, and that's what they do. So yeah, unfortunately, we have seen them on many occasions having a go at this plastic. Well, this is a tortoise poo. If I turn it over, you can see that this tortoise has been chomping away on one of those flip-flops, and they just don't understand that this is not food, and they will eat it.
So many people want to come here, so many people want to see its beauty, and that our trash ends up here is just wrong. I think if we were to go back 1,000 years or even less, you wouldn't see this. You would be able to look on a sandy beach and you know you can just walk and it's properly pristine. I think one of the things is Aldabra is an amazing protected area, but you have limits on how much you can protect it, and whether it's climate change or it's plastic pollution, it's showing that, yeah, you can be a million miles away and you can still have an impact on this place.
2.5 billion people live in nations that bound the shores of the Indian Ocean. In the west are the Seychelles, and the farthest flung of all the islands is Aldabra, a vast, remote atoll. Its position makes it vulnerable. Models show most of the plastic comes from the east coast of Africa. It's in the path of the South Equatorial Current, which sweeps plastic rubbish from throughout the Indian Ocean towards Aldabra. But it's being drawn from the east too, from as far as Indonesia, all contributing to a plastic and pollution problem threatening this treasure trove of wildlife that brought us to Aldabra as part of the Nekton mission to explore the deep ocean in this remotest part of the planet. This, I have to say, is the first live television broadcast that anybody has done here where we are on Aldabra Atoll. The things they're finding already in this plastics hunt is children's shoes, absolutely loads of them, as you can see. Plastic bottles, we know about the problem of plastic bottles. Why there are so many flip-flops, that's been extraordinary. They've cleared the South Island. They found 50,000 flip-flops, 50,000 flip-flops down there. Dr. Lindsay Turnbull, you are the person that have driven this Aldabra clean-up project. Your volunteers are working hard. Why was it so important to do you think?
Well, I think if you, as we said before, if you have the privilege to come here and it captures your heart, then you really cannot. When you see this, it breaks your heart, right? This should not be here. It's an absolute travesty. And I really wanted to be part of the solution. Although it was the Seychelles Islands Foundation who really recognised this problem and knew that they needed to organise a massive effort to get it cleaned up. And we thought it would be really great to do a collaborative project because it's a global problem. It's not the people of the Seychelles who have put this rubbish here. This is not where it's come from. It's global rubbish. You know, that toothbrush on the beach, that could be my toothbrush actually. And I think we do need to be part of the solution.
They toil in the heat of the tropical sun, the Aldabra clean-up volunteers from the Seychelles and from Oxford University, horrified by what they've seen.
It looked like the footage that I've seen of a tsunami. It was just because I mean, it's just people, you know, just mounds and mounds of the world's rubbish and people's shoes everywhere. It doesn't seem right. It's such a personal thing, people's shoes, and you're used to seeing all these piles of shoes because there's a disaster happened and it's just some kind of terrible mistake, you know, that this place has become the world's rubbish dump. How can you have that much rubbish on a UNESCO World Heritage Site? I mean, if you look at this right now, it looks like this is the middle of nowhere. There's no ships on the horizon, there's no planes flying overhead, there's nobody for hundreds of miles, and yet 50,000 flip-flops can be collected by 12 people in 2 weeks.
Josie, what are the sort of things you found here?
I mean, everything and anything you can imagine that's ever been made of plastic. These are just some toothbrushes. You might recognise these brands. This is a part of a North Face flip-flop. This is the packaging of a water bottle that's come from Malaysia. This is What else have I got in here? All the things that I find interesting. This is some orange juice wrapping that's also come from Indonesia. Oh, and this is a king chess piece. One of our other volunteers has managed to collect basically a full chess set just from cleaning the beaches.
It's devastating. There's still the magic around Aldabra, but seeing the marine litter just makes you really, really frustrated, really angry that our consumption, it is us, it is me, you, everyone, is doing this to such an pristine environment that is untouched.
That first day when we were deployed down to the south of the atoll, where we'd be based for up to 2 weeks, that's when we saw the gravity of the situation, and it really was shocking. I've never seen so many flip-flops in one place in my life. You could see the impact that it was having on the habitat as well. So particularly for nesting turtles, you could see the many obstacles and obstructions that were in their way before they even got to the sea. Same with tortoises. You could see just where one was grazing by the grass, there was a piece of plastic very close to them as well. So it was very shocking. I mean, this is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is a pristine environment that's where time stops in many ways when you're here. So to see this place that in many ways is so unaffected by human life, affected by human life, was really shocking.
It's not just plastic that is breaching Aldabra's protected waters. Teeming with apex predators, this is a healthy ecosystem founded on coral. But what will happen to this habitat if the coral itself is threatened by another global man-made problem? This is a world of predator and prey. Aldabra's waters are home to at least 10 shark species. The black-tip reef sharks glide through the shallows. The presence of these apex predators, all monitored by the rangers.
This is fish guts, which we've collected from fish taken in subsistence fishery. So it's a mixture of gills, intestines, liver, hearts. This is our baited remote underwater video system. As you can see, there's the bait canister here filled with fish guts, and the GoPro is just simple record. We'll drop down for about an hour, and then we'll retrieve it, and then later on when we're back on land, that's when we can look at the footage and see what's been attracted to the bait. We're looking at species that are, you don't often see them whilst we're doing scuba diving, so they're quite easily disturbed, and they're diver shy, and also they're deeper than what we can dive in some parts. We see loads of different species of shark, tawny nurse sharks, sharp-toothed lemon sharks, grey reefs, your black-tip reef sharks, your silver tips, sometimes, if you're lucky, hammerheads or tiger sharks.
Sharks are a sign of a thriving habitat, with healthy coral providing food and shelter for marine creatures up and down the food chain. But the Seychelles, like reefs across the world, have been hit with warming oceans. Devastating bleaching events have ripped at the fabric of this coral community, like here, Cousin Island, near the most populated part of the Seychelles, where much of the coral is dead. When water is too warm, vibrant corals expel the plant-like organisms living in their tissues, causing coral to turn white. Smothered with algae, some fail to recover. Reefs thousands of years old can die within weeks. The Seychelles lost up to 90% of its coral in the most recent bleaching event in 2016, but Aldabra fared better than most.
Aldabra is a huge marine protected area. There's no development along the coastlines, there's no fishing, there's no pollutants going into the water here. So the ecosystem is balanced. There's no herbivores are being taken out of the ecosystem as they are in many other areas across Seychelles where they're fished. And that means that there's a healthy herbivore, you know, parrotfish, surgeonfish, and they're all grazing on the algae that would soon overtake the reef after a disturbance event like bleaching. And that allows the coral to then come back much faster than it would if coral was having to contend with this algae and fight for the space on the reef.
The importance of coral is everywhere to be seen. It is made of coral. If the coral starts to die, eventually this place will die. It will weather. Let's walk you over, shall we, to what is an ancient coral wall. And joining me here now is Dr. Lindsay Turnbull, who is on the board of the Seychelles Islands Foundation, who looks after this extraordinary place. But here we have complete corals, don't we? It's amazing.
Yeah, so this is probably about 125,000 years old, and that's the last time that this atoll emerged. So because of changes in sea level, the coral can suddenly find itself lifted up above, and then, of course, it just dies. So this is fossilised coral, and there's a fabulous mushroom coral, the entire thing fossilised into the wall there. Sometimes you can even see enormous fossilised giant clams. Just part of these walls, spectacular, but not fun to climb on or walk on. It's part of the brutality of this place.
Coral is literally the foundation for islands like this. If the coral dies, tropical islands will gradually disappear, buffeted, eroded, disintegrating. Aldabra has shown us that marine protection is key, increasing coral resilience to global warming events. This is an ocean nation. 99% of its territory is sea. The Seychelles government has pledged to place 30% of its oceans in marine protected areas by 2020. It is a major commitment with potentially broader consequences.
These are not only important for those coral reefs within those marine protected areas, but it has this spillover effect. And places like Aldabra and other reefs within the region may act as kind of nurseries and, you know, places where coral will be able to spew out that larvae to repopulate those other areas which are not so lucky to be protected, but, you know, may ensure the persistence of coral reefs in the future.
The fringing coral reefs hide an enormous lagoon, the beating heart of Aldabra. In these shallow, sheltered waters, washed by tides, life teems. It is a pool of creation.
I mean, this is the world's best kept secret, right? But in here, we have this magical world.
Mangroves, seagrass beds and corals all contribute to a rich mix of habitats, all intact and all interacting.
As a scientist, the lagoon is incredibly special. I think it's an incredibly dynamic place. It's constantly changing and it's pumping water in and out in this living way, almost like it is a living, breathing thing.
Their wings outstretched to 7 feet, the circling frigate birds give a sense of a prehistoric world as red-footed boobies nest in the mangroves below. Evolution on islands makes them exceptional. Native species like the Aldabra rail, the only flightless bird in the western Indian Ocean, are testament to their isolation.
It's an island, lots of things can't get here, and in particular, mammalian predators can't get here naturally. And that allows all kinds of mad experiments in evolution to take place, including flightless birds. Unfortunately, when humans arrived, they came here to harvest the tortoises and to harvest the turtles, but what they brought with them were rats, were cats, were pigs, were goats, and those things are utterly devastating to island wildlife.
Eradicating any invasive species and preventing more is a main aim for the rangers.
Please clean any footwear, both inside and out.
The few visitors are warned. The rules are strict.
Vacuum and clean all your bags.
But the invasive species are arriving by new means, carried across the ocean on plastic.
What's interesting about this is you can see, both from the way the degradation of this item and also the fact that it's got 3 large barnacle shells growing on it, that this has been floating around in the ocean for a very long time. It's not just about how it washes up on the beaches and causes problems here, but it's bringing something here. We have an Aldabra, an invasive marine sponge, for example. Now that used to be just found on the island of Guam, and gradually it has suddenly spread across the Indian Ocean. It can smother coral, but that's just one example of something that arrived. We don't know that it arrived on plastic, but it's possible that it arrived on plastic.
Or on fishing gear. Despite the complete ban on fishing in the waters around Aldabra, evidence of it is everywhere.
Fishing rope as a category by itself is the heaviest that we found so far. I think it accounts for about 60% of all the marine debris we picked up. It basically gets washed up onto land and inland as well. So then it affects tortoises. I've seen tortoises eating away at rope. It's terrible for the entire atoll because it doesn't just stop at the sea. It ruins everything.
Plastic pollution, global warming, both breaching Aldabra's strong defences, both worldwide problems. Rubbish collected. At high tide, it is shipped off isolated beaches. Seasonal bad weather makes Aldabra inaccessible for 7 months of the year. They must work fast.
We know for sure there's about 8 million tons of plastic entering our oceans every year. And you try and think of it in that sense, it's a drop in a drop. But over here, the main thing is to know that you're starting a process, that this stuff will end up back on our shores in some ways.
5 weeks, 50,000 flip-flops collected, 25 tons of rubbish cleared. The pristine perfection of Aldabra a step closer. The ocean will bring more of our waste washing inland. Wildlife will once again be threatened, but for now, Paradise Lost is being restored.
It's kind of hard to appreciate how beautiful somewhere is when it looks at midday a little bit like a desert that someone's turned into a rubbish dump. And then when the sun sets and all the wildlife comes out and the birds are flying and the turtles coming out and you've cleaned that beach and suddenly it just looks like the most stunning place in the world.
It's easy to despair. I think we need to look at Aldabra as a symbol of the plastics pollution and the marine debris challenge that we have. We ultimately need to switch the tap off. There is still a lot of plastic coming over to Aldabra. That's not of the Seychelles doing. But we're a country of under 100,000 people, and we're seeing stuff from all over the world washing up on our shores. This truly is a global problem. So in order for us to address this problem, we need to have a global solution.
It's so difficult for people to grasp some of the global challenges. They don't have a face. They're too nebulous. It's too big. If we can bring it down to this kind of scale and make it personal, all the challenges that the planet faces are faced here on Aldabra too. We have the challenge of plastic. We have the challenge of global warming. We have the challenge of invasive species, actually. If we can use Aldabra as a metaphor for the world, then Aldabra can have even more global importance.